Linda and I are delighted that you've taken some time on your Sunday afternoon to come spend some time with us and let us tell you about the Gateway Chamber Orchestra. Many of you may know about the Gateway Chamber Orchestra, but many of us don't. In fact, they're one of our hidden assets in the city of Franklin that many people don't know about, and we need to get the word out. So that's why Linda and I offered to host a reception for some friends and listen to some of their music and learn about how often they're going to be at the Franklin Theater, which is 4 times a year during the season. So this is really a talented group of musicians. They've been together now for about 10 years. I don't say that I'm a culturally musically oriented person maybe, but I listened to their music, and so I took it to somebody really new, and they said, boy, this is really good. In fact, then I kept reading, and on their bio, a couple of their recordings got Grammys. So, I mean, this is good stuff. They're directed by Greg Wall Neck. I love it. Did you not get it, Bob? I can go over it one more time. Yeah. It's great to have kind of an unusual last name. Mine's Ken Moore, and I always got called Dr. Sears. But some of you may not even remember that. So I'm going to skip our introduction, and Linda, do you want to say anything other than hello?
Hello.
So I'm going to turn it over to Greg, and he'll tell us about the program, and I think you're going to be in for a real treat this afternoon. So again, thank you for coming, and feel free to get up and go down and get some refreshments in between the musical acts. And Greg, come on.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Mayor and Mrs. Moore for hosting today. It's a pleasure to have you all here, and it's a pleasure to introduce, I think, 8 or 9 of the incredibly talented musicians from Middle Tennessee's very own world-class chamber orchestra, the Gateway Chamber Orchestra. We are about to turn 10, in fact, at the very end of October of this year, and tell you a little bit about the upcoming season and also what some of our activities have been in the past. I'm going to start with actually a brief video that we had made up about a year ago, and then I'll introduce the first of the performers.
Over the past decade, the Gateway Chamber Orchestra has brought world-class music to audiences throughout Middle Tennessee. Its innovative concert performances, distinctive recordings, and inspiring educational programs have enriched the lives of appreciative audiences, as well as thousands of school children, introducing many to classical music for the very first time.
We have the ability to approach timeless classics and cutting-edge contemporary works in a way that's very meaningful for the players, and that connection really draws in the audience.
Renowned musicians, emerging soloists, and contemporary composers perform with the orchestra season after season. By collaborating with leading visual artists and acclaimed authors, the GCO engages audiences of all ages through the energy of music and a multimedia experience.
Our Family and Children series provides an interactive approach so that parents and children can come experience great works with a discrete video accompaniment that helps to reinforce the beauty of the music. We offer an instrumental petting zoo for children to come and experience what's it like to try any of these different instruments from the orchestra, and craft activities that all connect with the concert they'll hear on a Sunday afternoon.
Much like a musical composition, where each note is important in achieving beautiful harmonies, forming positive relationships with individuals and businesses will build a stronger foundation and shape the future of the Gateway Chamber Orchestra for years to come.
Every member of that orchestra, everyone sitting on stage, feels like they're playing a vital role in the art that we're creating. So as we look back over these past wonderful 10 years, we must also look forward to the next 10 years. More recordings, a tour, the ability to collaborate with world-renowned artists. These things will all help define our community.
Gateway, a path to great music for those who haven't discovered it yet, and a path to new music for those who already have. Get involved at gatewaychamberorchestra.com.
Thank you, thank you. So that's a little bit of an introduction to the group, and I want to tell you a little bit more about some of the wonderful people that make it up and some of the projects that we're involved with, both in Clarksville but also here in Franklin, and ways that we can continue to grow right here in this community. I'm going to start by introducing a bassist. We don't usually start with a bass solo. In fact, routinely we don't get to the bass solo. This is Tim Pearson. Tim first joined us in this February of 2009, the very second concert in the history of the Gateway Chamber Orchestra, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what came out of that concert. Tim, you want to say a few words about what you're going to play?
Sure, yes, thank you. Thank you to Mayor Moore and Mrs. Moore for having us and for setting this up, and thank you to all of you who are familiar with Gateway, know the GCO, and are supporting us here, and we appreciate your support. And to those of you who don't know us and this is your first time, thank you so much for being here, and we hope to see you at upcoming events. The piece I'm going to play is by a gentleman named David Walter, who was a bass player in the early to mid 20th century. He's one of my favorite modern era bass players because he was very versatile. He played in the NBC Orchestra under Toscanini. And when he was done playing with the NBC Orchestra, he would trot on over and play on The Tonight Show. Very talented guy, and he was very good friends with Pablo Casals, who we know is somebody, he's a fantastic cellist, and really brought the cello into its modern era of cello playing, moved it forward, and one of the things that he did was rediscover the Bach cello suites. And so this piece is written in the style of the prelude of a Bach cello suite, and it's in D minor, which, and it happens, this is just a coincidence, Michael, who's going to be playing in a minute, is also playing, well, he's playing some Bach, and he chose movements from the D minor suite. And we actually hadn't talked about this, but it just worked out that way. So here's Prelude, Hommage à Casals by David Walter.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. Tim is part of the Gateway Chamber Orchestra, obviously, and I'm playing stage manager at the same time here, so bear with me. About 10 years ago, in October, a group of musical friends got together about an hour and 20 minutes up the road in Clarksville, Tennessee, and said, let's put on a concert. It was some people who taught at Austin Peay State University, and to help fill out the group, we asked some of our friends with the Nashville Symphony and some of the top freelancers in the area to help fill out the group. And we performed a piece by a composer named Arnold Schoenberg. It's Chamber Symphony Opus 9. It's a very difficult piece, and it was a ridiculous idea for a first concert. That became known as the Gateway. So over the course of the next few years, we got introduced to more incredible musicians, started putting on regular concerts, and actually got to do our first couple of recordings. As I mentioned, Tim joined us for a concert in February of 2009 that we called Wind Serenades, and that concert involved a piece by the great master Mozart. It's called his Grand Partita Serenade. It's been recorded over 100 times. And as a result of that concert, I sent a copy of the concert recording to a friend of mine who's a producer in Boston. His name is Blanton Allspaw. And I didn't hear back for a few weeks. And then I got a phone call from Summit Records in Los Angeles, and they wanted to release it. So we recorded it that summer, and it was released, and Blanton was nominated for the Grammy for Classical Producer of the Year with Wind Serenades. So then 2 years later, we did Chamber Symphonies, and Blanton won the Grammy for Classical Producer of the Year. It was in 2012. The first one, Wind Serenades, that Mozart piece, which was made famous in the movie Amadeus. There's a scene where Salieri's talking about a rusty squeeze box in one note. That's the piece. The leading reviewer of classical music is a publication called Fanfare Magazine. Their head reviewer, Jerry Dubins, referred to our recording. They said, of the recordings I know of this piece, including the top groups from Vienna, London, and New York City, I would choose this one from Middle Tennessee. That's not the last we've heard from Jerry Dubins, because a couple years after Chamber Symphonies, one of our principal cellists, a former member of the Nashville Symphony and now one of the really great emerging cello soloists in his field, Michael Sammis, decided that he would like to collaborate with the Gateway Chamber Orchestra to release his album, Reinecke Cello Concerto. And I believe that one, Jerry Dubin said, of my 5 favorite recordings for the entire year, this is one of them. I'm putting it on my want list. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michael Sammis.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be here, and I've, like Greg said, I've been with the Gateway Chamber Orchestra for since almost the beginning, and it's really been a very important part of my musical life. Back when I was in the symphony, it provided that place where I could be me and my own creative self and work with other people to work together and create this thing that is all about teamwork. And that's a very different feeling often than you get playing in a symphony orchestra. Not to knock symphony orchestras, but it's just different. So I think the chamber orchestra really fills that hunger that all of us classical string players often feel. And to be now coming to Franklin, I think has taken the group to yet another level. So I very much look forward to our concerts here, always. Tim actually introduced what I'm going to play, so I don't have to say very much. But I'm playing 2 movements from the D minor solo cello suite by Bach, and Casals, in the spirit of the chamber orchestra, Gateway Chamber Orchestra, Casals, these pieces by Bach were his legacy. Before him, no one knew these pieces, and now they're so common in a way. So that very much fits with the Gateway, as Greg introduced that term earlier. So this is the Allemande and Courante from the D minor suite. And in full disclosure, I'm very nervous playing Bach because Bach is pretty much the hardest that there is. So I'm just going to say that and name it. Okay.
Tell you as a conductor, there's nothing better than having talented friends. Michael mentioned, or we talked a little bit about the recordings that the Gateway Chamber Orchestra has been involved with, but obviously what we've been involved with from the very beginning is putting on concerts. And starting in 2010, we staged our first Masterwork series, and over the course of that season, an idea of how to program, how to put pieces together in a concert emerged. And what we started to do is find, well, we want to always present an established masterwork, a piece that even people who aren't very familiar with classical music will recognize a melody from, symphony by Mozart or Beethoven, something like that. But there's also thousands and thousands of pieces, some of which by famous composers, some by composers that we sort of have forgotten about, that are also wonderful, that deserve to be played. And the idea of pairing an overlooked treasure alongside an established masterwork became part of our mission. And then the last piece of that three-legged stool, located right here in the middle of our country, near one of the largest army bases in the world, it seemed very appropriate that we should also be paying attention to the leading contemporary American composers. And the trick is to always find a thread to have those pieces hold together. I'll get into how we're shaking that up a little later. In addition to the Masterworks programs, we started presenting Family and Children's series, which you just saw in the video. And those came out of a collaboration with some visual artists named Kel Black and Barry Jones, as well as a children's author, a famous musicologist who's an endowed chair at Georgetown University, would come to town and narrate her book. So up till this point, those are programs that we've offered in Clarksville, but the Masterworks series appeared in Franklin starting 3 years ago. Dan Jones reached out to us and said, I understand that you've been doing a downtown historic building series in Nashville. We would love for you to become the house classical band at the Franklin Theater. So our Sunday afternoon matinees in Clarksville are now performed on Monday evenings here in Franklin, starting on September 25th. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the upcoming season. But one of the things that we would very much like to be involved with is also bringing the educational programming into Williamson County and the Franklin community. And we'll talk about how maybe you can get involved in a bit. Next up, I would like to introduce one of our talented principal horn players. This is Kristen Sinkowitz.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. The piece I'm going to play for you is Henri-François Vuitton, Capriccio for solo viola. François was a Belgian romantic violinist, violist, and composer, and he wrote this as an homage to Paganini. Paganini was also a violinist and violist as well late in his life. You'll notice I am neither a violinist nor violist, so it is with great appreciation to my string playing friends that I borrow their music. You'll notice that there are some certain things that string players can do that horn players can't, but I think this is one of my favorite things about being in the Gateway Chamber Orchestra, is that there's a pile of music I get to offer my audiences with the chamber orchestra that I don't otherwise get to play very often. Very, very beautiful music, things that I'm glad to uncover, that I'm glad to share. And so I'll add this to the list of pieces that I'm glad to share with you.
can attend an entire season of concerts and not hear a horn player play that many notes. It's a phenomenal thing. So the season this year is going to open on Monday evening, September 25th, with a program we're calling American Originals. And that's because this year, in an effort to celebrate our 10th anniversary, we thought rather than sticking with that three-legged stool programming, we were going to take a look at all the different things that have helped shape us. Well, one of the composers that has really helped shape us is the great American composer, Aaron Copland. And we're going to feature two of our own, English hornist Roger Wiesmeyer and trumpeter Rob Waugh. Rob is here, right over here, yeah. Actually, there's a handful of musicians not performing today that are also around. I'll introduce a few of them in a bit. And we're going to have a guest clarinetist with us from the Los Angeles Philharmonic. Boris Alekverdian is going to come and play a new work by Middle Tennessee composer Christina Spinay, her clarinet concerto, as well as Aaron Copland's clarinet concerto that he wrote for Benny Goodman. I figured, well, we better have a clarinet player play today, all right? And I just happen to know two terrific ones. We've got Spencer Pruitt, and I'm going to let him introduce his piece. Also with us today is Lee Levine, over here. Hi, Lee. And please welcome to the stage, this is Spencer Pruitt.
Yeah, no problem. Let me just get set up a little bit and I'll tell you a little about my piece. So one thing that's unique about Shalom Aleichem Rav Feidman by Bela Kovash is that it originated from klezmer music, which traditionally is music made by untrained musicians. So normally we go to music school, we practice, we can't do, and then we learn to read the music. And this is the complete opposite of that. So this tradition of music is typical from Eastern Europe, especially Israel, in the Jewish faith. And these street musicians would improvise these elaborate melodies that would mimic things that they would hear in nature and prayers from church. And then in the last 20 years or so, we've started to notate that, and classical musicians have learned how great it really is. So in this piece, you're going to hear, I think of it in three parts. The first part is a call to prayer, the prayer itself, and then there's a dance. So I hope you enjoy Shalom Aleichem by Bela Kovash.
right, as we get situated for our final performance, I thought it would be a great idea to, if we're going to feature some of our soloists, it's really nice if at the very end of the program we can bring together a group of the musicians to perform. So while Katie is helping with stands and the one last chair over there, I'll say a few more words about the upcoming season. So as I mentioned, we're going to start on September 25th. And Stephanie, do you have some brochures you could pass out? That would be wonderful. Our 4-concert Masterwork series, which is being presented on Monday evenings at the Franklin Theater, starting at 7:30. Probably the only place in the country where you can get popcorn, a beer, and listen to some Mozart. We're going to continue with our landmark celebration, our 10th anniversary in the beginning of November. And I'm so excited about that because we're going to close that program with the very first piece that we ever played. Now, there's a kind of scary group of composers to a lot of classical music fans. We call them the Second Viennese School. They're known because their music can be a little bit thorny. We've decided to see if we could find, and we've done it, 3 beautiful works, one each by each of these famous composers, for unexpected beauty. I think you're in for a real treat with that second concert in November, and that will actually mark our 10th anniversary. In January, on the 28th, Mozart will turn 262 in one day. His birthday will have been the day before, and we've decided to do a program inspired entirely by Mozart. We're going to present his Linz Symphony, as well as one of the other work that appeared on our Wind Serenades recording, the Richard Strauss Serenade. Well, it's a celebration of Mozart. Why is somebody else on there? One of the reasons that Strauss wrote that piece was because his father had played in the very same orchestra on horn that Mozart had written that Grand Partita Serenade for 100 years earlier. And we're going to take 4 melodies, we're not going to. Peter Tchaikovsky, the great Russian composer, took 4 famous melodies by Mozart and turned them into his own orchestral suite. And we're going to close the year with a program that's not entirely ready for print. We are starting a new festival. There are lots of mostly Mozart, remarkably Mozart, okay Mozart kinds of festivals all around the country. One of the composers that has defined us from our very first season is Mozart's colleague, a great Austrian composer named Franz Joseph Haydn. So we'll have a very exciting announcement about the next month or so about what exactly will be on that program, but I promise you it's going to be terrific. So without further ado, I would like to introduce a quartet of Gateway Chamber Orchestra members. Who's going to walk out first? Ros von Berindian and his wife Megan, yay, and Isabel Bartels, and my wife, Lisa Wolnick. Megan and Razvan, along with Spencer, are 3 of the newest members of the Chamber Orchestra. They've been playing with us for 2 years now. This is going to start their 3rd season. Isabel's been with us for about 6 or 7 years, and she's a wonderful member of the Nashville Symphony, along with playing with the Gateway Chamber Orchestra. And, well, no introduction for my wife. I'll let her say a few words about Mozart.
Hello. Those of you that have seen the movie Amadeus or are acquainted with Mozart probably know that he had a great enthusiasm for life and living. Unfortunately, that enthusiasm was perhaps not extended to the flute, as he wrote some rather disparaging remarks about the flute to his father. Then he was commissioned by an amateur flutist who he did not particularly like to write a handful of flute quartets and some concerti. Well, that was not met with great enthusiasm either, but he did write some pretty amazing pieces as a result of this commission. And I'm sure that after you listen to me and my enthusiastic colleagues, you will agree that his lack of enthusiasm for the flute was misguided.
And they have such fun doing it. So as we wrap up, I want to take a moment and just recognize a few other people who are here with us today. The president of the board of directors for the Gateway Chamber Orchestra, Tom Perry, recently retired CFO from Delta Dental. Hi, Tom. And his wife, Susie. Thank you for joining. And for the past year, Pam Lewis and her staff at PLA Media have been wonderful supporters in helping us get the word out about the Gateway Chamber Orchestra and our activities here in Franklin. Thank you, Pam. There's a couple of other musicians that are around. I introduced you to Lee. I introduced you to Rob. Chris Stenstrom fills out the rest of our cello section. And before I turn things over to Mayor Moore, I'd like to thank you again, you and your wife, for hosting us today. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. We're going to have a little bit of time for more wine, more food, get to know the musicians. They'd love to talk with you. And we'd love to get you involved with the Gateway Chamber Orchestra. Help people get to know the GCO.
Let's give Greg a big hand. And another hand for our musicians. Wow. Wow. I too want to give my thanks to Pam. Pam brought Greg to my attention and the Gateway Chamber Orchestra, and she's dedicated a lot of her spare time for trying to promote them. And thank you, Pam, and for all you do in our community. And then if you've noticed in the back, we have Robert and Stefan from our communications department. So I suspect we might be seeing some of this on the city website and Facebook page and whatever they do, whatever all those things are that we do. You know, this has been a wonderful afternoon to me, and it's been so much fun having you here with us. And I hope you'll stick around for a few minutes and talk to the musicians. You know, how talented are they? Wow. So thanks for taking your Sunday afternoon and coming and taking time. Greg, again, thank you so much. And a round of applause again. Do you want to say another word? Well, I do have one more word. I went on the website this afternoon and bought our season tickets. So I invite you to please join me on Monday nights for the
Thank you so much. And it would have been woefully inappropriate for me to not point out, yes, we do have a website, gatewaychamberorchestra.com. You can follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Because we perform at the Franklin Theater, we use the Franklin Theater box office, which is open on Main Street most days, but you can also visit their website. Our website will redirect you to that. We'd love to have you get involved. Thank you so much.